one thing I like about Singapore is that it's a small country, but you can also do a lot of things. I mean, after work or let's say during weekends, you can do things you want. I mean, you can easily go to travel to Malaysia if you want over the weekends. It's easy. You can easily do that.
This is PT Meal Podcast, where we ingest and digest physical therapy information from physical therapists around the world with a Filipino twist. With your host, Johan De La Paz, a Filipino physical therapist who has worked in different practice settings from the Philippines and here in the US. Let's indulge and satisfy our cravings to learn and be inspired.
Welcome back to PT Meal Podcast, a buffet of play, therapies, movement, exercises, activities, and leisure, all packed in a hearty conversation of of physical therapy profession and practice with a Filipino flavor. I am Johan De La Paz, again your host. Welcome back to the podcast. So this podcast is available in your favorite podcast streaming apps: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Anchor, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and many, many more. You can also catch the full episodes on YouTube if you want to be like in the loop on fresh episodes or updates or interview snippets. Follow us in our social media accounts in Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter. All right. So in today's episode, we are going to catch up with a fellow physiotherapist working in Singapore. My guest is Jonathan Magpoc Eusebio, a physiotherapist working in a community hospital in Singapore. He has experience in delivering rehabilitative services across settings in inpatient and outpatient facilities, nursing homes, and wellness centers catering to diverse populations from adult to geriatric patients. He earned his Doctor of Physical Therapy degree from the University of Montana. So, Jonathan, welcome to PT Meal Podcast.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. So, I think I connected with Jonathan from LinkedIn when I saw that he's working in Singapore, and that is, since Singapore is close to the Philippines, I think that is something that other physical therapists in the Philippines would be interested in knowing about how is a physiotherapist working there, how to go there, or what are the requirements. But before that, before we dive into that, Jonathan, could you tell us your physical therapy story? How did you become a physical therapist, and what led you to where you are now?
Okay. Basically, I graduated from Emilio Aguinaldo College
Mm-hmm.
many years back, and then after that, actually, my first job was to be in the fitness industry.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I also volunteered in some of the clinics and hospitals in my hometown in the Philippines. So, but actually, there's not so much jobs as a physio in the Philippines. Usually, just volunteer work.
Mm-hmm.
So, what I did was to work in a fitness industry, Slimmers First.
Mm-hmm.
So, I became a personal trainer. I also teach some group classes actually at that time. So, I moved from Slimmers World to Fitness First. So basically, the first few years of my practice is in the healthcare industry. I mean, in the fitness industry.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then after that, actually, I decided I want to change settings. That's why, from the Philippines in a fitness industry, I wanted to move to another country, but I moved to Singapore, but also as a personal trainer for the first few months. Then I worked my way through to to go into the clinical field as a physio.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then because in Singapore, you cannot be a physio yet. You have to go through the same process, like the ones in the US, some credentialing, taking the English exams and everything. So, um, I worked as a trainer again for a few months, then moved to a hospital as a therapy assistant before I found an employer who can sponsor me to take the qualifying exam, which is the licensure exam in Singapore.
Mm-hmm.
Then from there, I became a physio the next few years. Yeah.
All right, good. So, why Singapore? Why did you think of working in Singapore when you're in the fitness industry first?
Mhm.
What gave you the idea? Like, maybe I want to go to Singapore.
One thing, actually, I didn't think so much of that one. The only reason I have for myself is that probably Singapore is much closer to the Philippines.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so let's say if I need to go back to the Philippines and visit my parents or my family, it's much easier because it's just a few hours.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was in the fitness industry, so it's better to go in there. I mean, with the same field first.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Was it common for people in the fitness industry, like personal trainers, to go to Singapore to work as a personal trainer? Is it easy to transfer that
Yeah.
way? Okay.
As a personal trainer, yes, because they don't have much qualifications that is really needed for you to be a trainer.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because I came from Fitness First in the Philippines, so
Right.
I moved to California Fitness in Singapore. So the reason why it gave me an idea because I'm a fitness manager in the Philippines last time, and
Mm-hmm.
I do have a trainer who went to Singapore. And
Okay.
I was encouraged, or I was told if I wanted to try to be a trainer in Singapore. So I just gave it a try because I was also looking to change my practice environment at that time.
Right. Right. And going to Singapore initially, did you have to apply already here in the Philippines, or you went
Mhm.
there as a tourist, then applied there, then changed your status or whatever? How did that
Mhm.
happen?
What happened was is because of that personal trainer who, I mean, my who worked for me in Fitness First last time, who were in Singapore, introduced me to his employer.
Oh, okay, okay.
So before I went to Singapore, they already processed my working visa.
I see. Gotcha,
Yeah.
gotcha. So you already had that offer before going to the Singapore.
Yes, yeah.
Gotcha. All right. So how many years have you been working there now as a physiotherapist?
Now but 8 years, going to 9 years.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Nice. So from fitness industry, as a personal trainer, what led you back to the practice?
Because my current practice in Singapore, I mean the fitness club or
Uh-huh.
the California Fitness is just behind or just in front of a hospital.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So you
so
always see someone like going in the hospital calling
and
them.
then then actually um it inspires me to go back to the hospital setting.
Uh-huh.
So what I did was that time is that I was still at work in California Fitness,
Mm-hmm.
and then I do have a resume, a printed one.
Mm-hmm.
I just drop by the hospital and drop my application. Then the next day they called me.
Oh, really? Without looking at for job postings or anything, you just walked
Yeah.
up and gave your resume. That's impressive. Okay. Then what happened?
Then after that, actually the following day, I'm not sure. They probably needed some therapy assistance in the hospital.
Okay.
So the following day they called me up. They actually wanted for me to be interviewed. I mean, very soon. So
Okay.
but I cannot find actually a time um for me to give them. I mean for a schedule. So
Mm-hmm.
what I did was because usually as a fitness trainer you have a quota also.
Mm-hmm.
You're guided by getting a sales for the month. So usually you work from sometimes very early as 6 in the morning to sometimes very late in the evening to catch
Mm-hmm.
that personal training sales.
Mm-hmm.
So I took my break for that 1 hour break to for my interview in the hospital. Anyway, I just have to walk in because it's just behind the
Uh-huh.
nightclub, right? So I went there for an interview during my lunchtime. I mean, or
Uh-huh.
something like that.
Uh-huh.
So it's actually a panel interview with different doctors and the rehab department.
Wow.
Yeah. And
Okay.
then and I remembered my fitness manager we're looking for me because I cannot be found in the club at that time. And so my phone is ringing during the interview. Yeah. But everything went well actually.
Uh,
Because I mean like what I've said, probably they're looking for a therapy assistant because they said there's someone who resigned who was also a Filipino.
uh-huh.
Yeah. So they wanted to get me in. But what
Okay.
they told me is that they have to see first whether I'm fit for the job. So they
Uh-huh.
want me to experience the actual work. So
Okay.
they scheduled me for, let's say, a half day or like a few hours of going to the hospital and then be attached to another therapy assistant and therapist. Yeah,
Okay.
something. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
and then they asked me if I like it. I said yes, and then they hired me.
Oh, so you did that, what do you call that? That experience while you're still employed in California in your fitness club?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. All right. And as a so you got accept you were offered and you got accepted there
Mm-hmm.
and you worked as a therapy assistant.
Yes, correct.
So what does a therapist assistant do there in Singapore? Because we have a uh, physical therapist assistant as well here in
Mm-hmm.
the US, and they did then and they do almost everything that a physical therapist do except for evaluations and
Mm-hmm.
discharge and reassessments and stuff. But the whole management physical the therapist assistant can physical therapy assistant can do. So what is the therapist assistant doing in Singapore?
Oh, yeah, I think that is it's different. It's
Okay.
because the therapy assistant they consider here in Singapore is similar to the physiotherapy aid, I believe, in the
A,
US.
okay.
Yeah. So it's basically we just have to follow what the therapist is, I mean, ask us to do, like teaching the exercises, getting the things they want, or walking the patient, those kind of things.
Uh-huh.
So we don't do that assessment, we don't do that planning, or
Uh-huh.
we also don't need to change what was really instructed of us. So we
Uh-huh.
cannot modify anything.
Yeah.
It's just basically following what the therapist would like us to do.
Okay. All right. So how long did you have to work as a therapist assistant before deciding that you want to be a physiotherapist in Singapore?
Mhm. Actually, right from the interview itself, they asked me if I wanted to be a physio.
Mm-hmm.
I said yes, definitely.
Uh-huh.
Um, but I don't know yet the process at that time. So when
Okay.
I got uh, in the hospital, they told me actually the process in Singapore is you cannot take the qualifying exam or the licensure exam without the employer applying for you.
Wow.
So
Okay.
that's the toughest part. So
Uh-huh.
unlike in the US or probably in the Philippines, if you want
Uh-huh.
to take the exam, just apply on your own, then you can take it.
Uh-huh.
In Singapore, it's different. There has to be an employer who will submit your application before you can take the exam.
Gotcha.
So the first few months, first few years, I'm actually encouraging or persuading my employer to allow me to take the exam,
Mm-hmm.
but actually they didn't.
Okay.
Yeah, so took me about 3 years as a therapy assistant. Yeah. So,
Okay.
but basically, I tried to learn what is being required to
Mm-hmm.
pass the qualifying exam at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So, if they have a written exam and a practical at the same time.
Wow. Okay.
So, and because they're not allowing me to take the exam, I really have to find another employer who would do that for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. So what happened? Did you find a different employer?
So, what I did was I enrolled in another hospital, an acute hospital, who is offering some review
Mm-hmm.
or some like a bridging program for me to be able to uh have an edge of passing the qualifying exam here in Singapore. So I did that for a few months.
Mm-hmm.
Then while looking for an employer to sponsor me in the next few months. So I found one,
Uh-huh.
but they also hired me at the same time as a therapy assistant first.
Okay. So you left that
I
first.
left the first one, then
Uh-huh.
I moved to the second one.
Uh-huh.
So I'm still working in the same job, but they're already applying for I mean, the application for the licensure.
Gotcha. I see. I see. When you said that you enrolled in a bridging program, is it mandatory for everyone to do that, or is it something that you did that because you want to have an edge in the exams?
It's not a requirement.
Uh-huh.
It's just that because the exam here is different from our exam in the Philippines, which is just written.
Right.
I'm more concerned regarding the practical part,
Uh-huh.
but I don't have any idea at all.
Mm-hmm.
So that actually is not a requirement, but it will give you a much better chance of passing the exam when you, I mean, when you go for that course.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Um, so the so first one is that a person PT should have an employer first to sponsor you to take the qualifying exam.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a requirement to do an English exam as well?
Yeah, the requirements actually, yeah, they consider a lot of things. They also consider, of course, your experience, your
Uh-huh.
educational background. So they have you have to go through a credentialing process. So
Okay.
you have to contact your school at the same time, your in the PRC in the Philippines, your
Uh-huh.
licenses, and then have it submitted to what they call as the Allied Health Professional Council or AHPC,
Mm-hmm.
similar to PRC.
Okay.
So they evaluate everything and then take the English exam, which is also a requirement. During my time, there is no English exam. I mean,
Oh.
they will have to ask, but they are not very particular with the score.
Mm.
But this time, I mean, a few years back, they started. I think after my exam time, they started putting a minimum score for each and every part of, let's say, the English exam,
Mm-hmm.
like the listening,
Mm-hmm.
reading, and everything.
Is there a specific English exam that they want you to do, or any like IELTS or TOEFL?
There's three. First is TOEFL.
Oh, okay.
I think at least 100 marks.
Mm-hmm.
And then IELTS, they have to get at least seven for every section of
Mm-hmm.
the IELTS. You have to take the academic one.
Uh-huh.
Then there is one that I'm not very familiar with, OET, occupational English test, if I remember it right.
Yeah, I think
And
that's
they have
rare.
to have at least a grade something B or what. Yeah.
Also, so you can choose either of those three, any of the
Yes.
three. Okay. So qualifying exam, credentialing process. You have to have. Do you have to have a license from your um country of origin, like
Um,
ARC? Do you have to have that?
I It's written there, but actually I'm not sure how they do it, but because I've never heard anyone who managed to take the exam if they're not licensed yet. I think
Okay.
most of us they will consider that we are licensed from the from the country of origin.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. All right. Do you have to take any extra, what do you call this? Extra courses or programs, like for example here in the US, to to because the credentialing process here, they look for certain things.
Mm-hmm.
In Singapore, is it like that, that they look for certain things that if they don't see it in your curriculum, they would ask you to take it, some extra classes?
I've never heard of anyone having go through that.
Okay.
What I heard is that it's a pass or fail, whether
Hmm.
they want to accept you or not. Okay,
I
based
see.
on the qualifications they set,
Uh-huh.
then they will just say you're qualified, you can take the exam, or if not, they will just say no.
Okay.
And most of
Without
the
explanation?
time, they will not give an explanation. Yeah, the same
Uh,
thing with the qualifying exam actually.
uh-huh.
Uh, if you pass or fail, they will just give a letter or send a letter to you that you pass. For some of my friends who failed, they will just mention that you failed, but they will not give any reason at all. You
Oh.
cannot even get your scores.
Oh, okay. I see. How many takes for those who failed can you do?
So here, you're only allowed two takes. So
Mm.
if you fail the first one, you have to make it sure that you pass the second one. Because
Oh,
otherwise, if you fail the second one, you cannot be a PT or cannot be a physiotherapist here in Singapore anymore.
I see.
Yeah.
And do they have like a minimum educational requirement? Like, is it just bachelor's, or do you have to have master's or DPT?
I only had a bachelor's degree at that time. I was
Okay.
accepted.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Yeah, because I also don't know what's their minimum. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, higher educational background would be better, I believe. But a
Uh-huh.
bachelor's degrees, yeah, is the minimum.
Okay. All right. How about work experience? Did they ask if did they say if there's a minimum work experience to take the qualifying exam?
They also didn't mention, although, I mean, if you look at their guidelines, it's actually quite vague. They will just mention that we'll look into your license from the country of origin. They will look into the experience that you had.
Mm.
But they don't mention anything specific. Yeah.
So you would have a better chance if you had an work experience anywhere.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
That's why I also quite worried at that time because most of my practice are in the fitness industry.
Uh-huh.
It's just that probably it's because I started as a therapy assistant. So I'm
Uh-huh.
working in Singapore. Probably I have an idea of how things work
Hmm.
in the rehab setting. So yeah, probably they could also consider that.
Hmm. That helped. You also worked in. Did you also work in the Philippines as well as physical therapist, or did you go straight to the fitness industry?
I volunteered in a hospital.
Mm-hmm.
I think that time in the province, like a
Uh-huh.
general hospital in my province. They will
Uh-huh.
give you some allowance or salary,
Hmm.
but not you're not really employed. That's why it took. I mean, that may decide because I really wanted to have a job. I mean, a specific salary on a monthly basis. That's why I wanted to. I mean, I moved to a fitness industry.
Gotcha. I
Yeah.
see. All right. So that takes care of the process. That kind of seems reasonable. However, it's without that concrete like requirements, it's kind of hard to really know where you stand, right? But
Yeah.
English exam is pretty straightforward. Qualifying exam is pretty straightforward, written and practical.
Mhm.
Um, so the practical part, because not many people know that there's a practical exam there in
Mhm.
Singapore. What goes on there?
Okay, I'll tell you first what's in the written exam.
Okay.
Written exam, it's just basically during my time, there's actually 10 multiple choice questions only. Yeah, and then the rest of the questions are cases.
Oh
So they'll
wow.
give you one case in MSK,
Uh-huh.
then there will be series of questions after that, then another one for a cardiopulmonary case,
Uh-huh.
yeah, and another one for neuro. And
So is
then
it,
there is
sorry, is it paragraph form? Do you have to answer in paragraphs?
Yeah, you have to answer in private. It's up to you how you want to answer the those series of questions after the case.
Oh wow.
And
Okay.
because there are some questions that are just probably straightforward.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then some questions you really have to explain.
Mm-hmm.
Like if they ask you what's the pathophysiology of, let's say, a Parkinson's disease, then you have to explain in paragraph
Wow.
form. Yeah.
Okay.
Then the last part of the written exam is that there are some electives,
Uh-huh.
like women's health, yeah, those kind, and then or sports, which is
Uh-huh.
similar to ortho or MSK.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, there are also some, I mean, a series, but you only have to choose one in
Okay.
either of those electives, and
Uh-huh.
then answer also the questions follow. Then the practical part,
Uh-huh.
yeah, it's actually uh the one that is nerve-wracking.
Uh-huh.
It's
I
because,
imagine.
yeah, I mean, especially for me, that I usually when I do those kind of things, I feel very, very nervous. But and because you also have to go through different stations.
So with answering the written exam like as paragraphs and not um what do you call it, as easy as the ones that would do in other countries, like you do it on
Mm.
computer and that's it. And the practical as well. How long did you have to wait for the result to come out?
Oh, okay. Because that exam is 2 days. The first one is written. The
Uh-huh.
second is all the practicals.
Uh-huh.
The result actually will come out in a month,
Okay. All right.
in a
For
month's
you
time. So,
for them to check all your papers.
mhm.
Uh-huh.
And you will not be notified first. They will notify the employer who applied for you.
Okay.
So the big news, whether it's a fail or it's a pass, will be coming from your employer. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, your future employer, or I mean, as a yeah.
Uh-huh. I
the one
see.
who will hire you as a therapist.
Uh-huh. Okay. That's something that's different.
Mhm.
In Canada, it's the same process as well that you have to look for a job first. Okay, is it Canada or Australia? I think Canada. I, I might be wrong, but in in, a, in another country it's the same that you have to have an employer first before you apply for a license, not the exam, but a license.
In
Because
Canada?
in Canada, I think you have to have an employer first. Because
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know why. I forgot why. Anyway, but that's yeah, that's a little different. All right. So now you're a physiotherapist. What is the role of a physiotherapist in Singapore as compared to what you did in the Philippines? Is it basically the same? Are there any differences?
Mm-hmm. It's I would say it's just basically the same. It's just that in Singapore it's more structured. Um we also don't have direct access. Probably Singapore will have direct access. I mean, a patient can refer themselves to a PT. I think only in private, but in public you have to get a referral from another healthcare professional. But the same process as to how you do your thing. I mean, assessment and treatment and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah, and
Is
also different settings.
different setting as well. Is insurance a big driver in the Singapore as well, or do patients pay out of pocket?
Okay. Insurance plays a big part. It's because at least, especially for the elderly. Anyway, in Singapore, usually they have this. They pay up the government for a certain amount, and then that is being used for anything like a physiotherapy services.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they also can use their own insurance if they have one.
Mm-hmm.
They have what it's called, I think, a means testing. Depending on your age, if you're a younger one and are capable of paying and you don't have any insurance, you have to pay from your own pocket.
Okay.
Yeah, I
Mm.
think.
All right. And you mentioned there's no direct access.
There's no direct access. Generally in Singapore, you have to have a other healthcare professional to refer you to a PT.
Mm-hmm.
That's only usually in the public or
Okay.
government house, but usually private, you can go directly to a physio.
Also, so there's some form of direct access in
There's some
outpatient
form.
setting. I see. All right, that's nice. Um, so you're working in a hospital right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Are you in inpatient, outpatient,
I am in the inpatient setting.
inpatient? All right. Um, what kind of what's your common conditions that you handle in your practice right now?
I do have a variety of cases that I usually see in the hospital, but most of them, I believe, it's in the ortho cases.
Mm-hmm.
I do have also some medical conditions like cancer patients or palliative patients. I
Mm-hmm.
have neuro, stroke, Parkinson's kind of cases once in a while. Yeah, they're also, I mean, most of them are in the geriatric or elder population, but I
Mm-hmm.
also do get some younger ones who
Mm-hmm.
had an accident or road traffic accident and fractured their bones or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have a lot of arthroplasties, hip and knee, and then some spine operations. That's why it's mostly more often MSK.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's
All right.
generally my practice.
Is are your patients' condition more acute, or are they staying in the hospital a little bit longer?
No, it's not acute. We're the next to institution in line after the acute setting. It's because our hospitals are usually coming from the general hospital, the acute setting.
Okay.
Usually they stay there for a few days, a little
Mhm.
longer sometimes. Then if they need a further rehab, or then they will be referred to our hospital. Then that hospital is just next to our community hospital.
Okay.
They're under a Sing Health system.
Uh-huh.
That's why from the acute hospital, they will just be transferred to us if it's agreeable
Uh-huh.
with the patient's family.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
If they needed more care.
Yeah.
and that care cannot be done at home or an
Yes.
outpatient facility. Gotcha.
Yeah, correct. Usually if they need it.
Uh-huh. All right. Um, being in diverse, culturally diverse country like Singapore, is there any challenges? Were there any challenges handling different cultures or working in Singapore as a physiotherapist, or was it
Mm,
easy?
It's not that very easy,
Uh,
especially for me coming from the Philippines.
mm-hmm,
Yeah. Um, cultural backgrounds. I mean, we differ in many ways.
mm-hmm,
Also the language that they speak. I
mm-hmm,
mean the elderly population. So most of them don't really speak English.
mm-hmm,
So there are some elderly who can, I mean, educated and can speak the English language, I can easily talk to them.
mm-hmm,
But if not, especially if they speak in Mandarin or Hokkien or
mm-hmm,
even Cantonese or sometimes like dialects like Tamil, it's very difficult. Sometimes I really have to get someone, my therapy assistant, if unless I'm a physio now, um, who can speak the language and help me translate.
mm-hmm,
Yeah, so the interview, the assessment process takes a little longer because there has to be translation
mm-hmm,
during that time. Um, and I also didn't, I mean, it's not also a requirement in Singapore during the credentialing part, because I mean, we were not allowed to take a course regarding cultural differences.
mm-hmm,
Yeah, because I believe in Australia or in Canada, you have to take a course similar to that and also study the healthcare system. Here in Singapore, it's not. You will learn that while you're already working.
as you go on.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. And so uh did you have to learn any language? Did you want to learn or have to learn any different language to work in there better or
Yeah, I did actually. There are a few courses offered outside. I enrolled
uh,
myself to one. I wanted to study Malay because some of my patients I mean, speaks in Bahasa
Bahasa?
Malayu.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that one is quite easy to learn. It's because Tagalog and Malay are quite similar. There are some
Right.
words that are the same, although
Mm-hmm.
sometimes spelled differently, but meaning is just basically the same.
Uh-huh.
Um, I do that, and I actually in the work setting, you will be put to a course by your employer in studying Mandarin or Hokkien or sometimes even Malay,
Mm-hmm.
especially if you're a foreign national. For but I find it very difficult, especially the Mandarin and Hokkien, because you have to study the different tones. Is if you say
Mm.
it wrongly, the meaning changes, and
Uh-huh.
then if you ask that to a patient, the patient sometimes will just frown, or sometimes they don't really understand you, or
Uh-huh.
will tell you differently, or something get scolded.
Uh-huh.
So
Uh-huh.
what I do the best is, I mean, to have a translator to help me translate for everything.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Aside from language barrier, are there any other, I mean, language and culture barriers, are there any other challenges that you encounter as a physio in Singapore?
Other challenges. Not that I think of. The
Uh-huh.
other, um, I mean, it's because, I mean, you're a foreign national. You have to, I mean, you're in Singapore, do what Singaporeans do.
Mm-hmm.
Then you just have to follow.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they are very competitive, I would say, generally, Singapore.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so you have to be the same. You have to be proactive. I remember the first employee I had in Singapore. It
Mm-hmm.
always reminds us to be proactive on everything.
Mm-hmm.
But I think they were raised that way.
Mm-hmm. I think that's one of the best cultures of natives of Singapore is the work ethics that
Mhm.
they bring with whatever they do.
Mhm.
So what do you now, enjoy as a physio therapist in Singapore? What do you like as a physio there?
What do I like? I mean, comparing my practice when I was just a fitness professional and comparing, I mean, working as a physiotherapist, I mean, it's more fulfilling to see patients, especially in the elderly population, helping them recover and to be as functional as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I find it very rewarding,
Mm-hmm.
um, and that makes me enjoy my work. Um, and also, I mean, the cultural differences, it probably a bit difficult at first, but actually it's also quite interesting because you learn the different cultures of the other people. Because not only the Singaporeans, you'll also be able to work from people from Myanmar or
Mm-hmm.
from other countries I mean, from Malaysia.
Uh-huh.
So that makes it interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, in working in a setting because all of us I mean, we have differences.
Uh-huh. And you
Yeah.
share all those culture with each other.
Yes.
Uh-huh. Gotcha. And how about working in Singapore in general? What do you like working? What do you like being there in Singapore?
What do I like? Okay. What do I like?
Singapore is a small country, right? And you can basically go up north is Malaysia or
Mm-hmm.
is it Malaysia?
Um, there because previously Singapore is a part of Malaysia.
Uh-huh.
So I mean, you can easily go to Malaysia in one
Uh-huh.
part in just about a few minutes.
And
Either
Indonesia
by
down there.
bus. Yeah, you
Uh-huh.
can easily go anywhere. One thing I like about Singapore is that it's a small country, but you can also do a lot of things.
Uh-huh.
I mean, after work or let's say during weekends, you can do things you want. I mean, you can easily go to travel to Malaysia if you want over the weekends. It's easy. You can easily do that.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And then there are other, I mean, I think they made it a point that you can enjoy some leisure activities. There's a lot of things you can do in Singapore.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of nice places where you can eat,
Mm-hmm.
especially the native dishes in Singapore. And you can also, although Singapore is not very, I mean, nature, I mean, like Philippines, we do have beaches. I mean,
Uh-huh.
we do have places to go similar to that.
Mm-hmm.
In Singapore, it's different. Yeah.
Okay. What I like Singapore when I went there for a while was the transportation was very accessible. I mean, you can go like anywhere, you can ride a taxi, you have your trains,
Mm-hmm.
and
That's also
anywhere you
very
go.
enjoyable.
What's that?
Yeah. So it's that's also very, I mean, likable in Singapore. It's because I mean, from the airport itself, I
Exactly.
mean, right from that airport going to any part of Singapore is very easy.
Mm-hmm.
The taxis are there. The train station is connected to the airport.
Mm-hmm.
Those kind of things. In just a matter of a few minutes, you can go from one end to another. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, those kind of things. It's different in the Philippines. You have to go through the traffic.
Right, right. I mean, if you're a solo person and you can go about Singapore, you can go anywhere without asking for help because you have taxi, you have your train, and the
Mhm.
train system is very clear. You can understand everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do people sometimes mistake you for a Malaysian or Indonesian?
They usually, I mean, some of them thought that I'm also Chinese.
Chinese?
So let's say when I buy something in a hawker center, for example,
Uh-huh.
or let's say some of my patients, they specifically, I mean, they're straight away ask me in Chinese,
Uh-huh.
but I'm telling them, no, I'm not Chinese. I cannot speak Mandarin.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
I guess when I went there, they were talking to me, and I was ordering in McDonald's, and they were like, I was like, I want number one. It's like satu, like yeah,
Yeah,
satu.
correct.
I don't.
That is Malay. Yeah.
Uh-huh. So yeah. So yeah. So it's so Singapore is another place that physical therapists can go into as
Mhm.
a as an alternative if they want to go
Mhm.
try it out abroad, experience things. No, how is the demand for a foreign physical therapist there? Is it rare to have that opening, or uh, have you heard of like hospitals, looking for physiotherapists, even foreign graduates and stuff?
Before during my time, I think there are less foreign. I mean, there are less therapists. I would say, especially the PT.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's different from the OT. OTs they need a lot. There are less OTs in Singapore in general
Uh-huh.
as a country. In PT, during my time, I think they probably need more as well. That's why they also hire foreign nationals who will be able to pass the qualifying exam.
Mm-hmm.
And that is because also there is the school that offers physiotherapy in Singapore only have a a few graduates at that time.
Mm-hmm.
But now they have more students
Mm-hmm.
than usually foreign nationals like me, who would like to take the QE and work here as a therapist. Usually they will have definitely a hard time.
Mm-hmm.
From what I heard, most of the foreign nationals are failing the exam. It's because they made it tougher. Yeah.
Okay.
Because they can easily graduate. I mean, students here and
Mm-hmm.
become a therapist straight away right after graduation. They don't need to take a licensure exam.
Because there's only one school.
Yeah, there's only one school,
Oh,
and I think it's a very rigorous process. They made it sure that the education, but everything that the student will have to learn in the school for them to be equipped as a therapist eventually.
mm-hmm. Right. Okay. I see. So you're saying it's more challenging now.
It's more challenging, I would say. Yeah.
Mhm. Okay. All right. Just to give an idea to our listeners, what's the average salary range of a Singapore physio in terms of Philippine peso?
Oh, in Philippine peso.
Yeah. Like average, like not in different settings.
I think it will just be the same, but likely it will range based on your experience.
Oh, okay.
Also, depending on your educational background. If let's say you do have a bachelor's only, because some of them last time they only have a diploma. They don't have a degree yet, but they can practice as a PT. I mean, those locals.
Okay.
So their salary definitely will be a lot lower.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but if you have a bachelor's degree, or even if you have, let's say, a doctorate or a higher degree program like me, you'll definitely get higher. But usually the range now, I would say it's anywhere from 3,000 to I think about 6,000
Singaporean dollars.
Korean dollars, and then multiply it by about, I don't know, 38. That would be the amount in peso.
Oh, I'll I'll pull out my I'll pull my calculator. So 3,000 Singaporean dollars times 38, around 114,000. Not bad.
Hmm, right.
Okay, and what and an average person, how much an average person would spend in a month with expenses like rent or food or stuff like that?
Mhm.
Is the cost of living big or expensive there?
It's Singapore has one of the highest cost of living in the world, actually, not just
Uh,
in Asia. I think we're not, if not number one, number two, next to the highest cost of living. The problem, I mean, the costliest part here in Singapore is the property, the rentals.
mm-hmm.
So, renting a property or a room for you to stay is, I mean, you'll spend about 1,000. Depending probably if you have friends here and then you will just share a whole flat or a whole room, then you can just share the expenses. Especially now, after the pandemic, the property skyrocketed. Yeah, even my landlord has to inform me that they will increase the rental. Yeah,
Wow.
by about sometimes as little as 200, depending to
Uh,
as high as 1,000 more than your current.
wow. So it
But
would be
average, yeah,
sorry.
average expenses. I mean, with your own salary, you can actually manage to pay for for your food, for your meals. Probably if you're just earning less, you can just, take away those extras that you probably don't need. Uh, but basically, your salary would be enough for you to earn a decent living, I would say.
Uh, okay. And good enough to live by yourself or not?
You have to live by yourself. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Because I've known some people, some friends that live that share an apartment just to cut costs in
Mhm.
Singapore because they said yeah, the rent is expensive. I'm
It's
looking at
expensive.
what do you call this? A website here, and a single person is estimated monthly cost are 1,000, around 1,000 dollars, Singaporean dollars without rent. Like, wow, it's still big.
Sometimes it's true, yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah, but
But if you're sharing a room, and then usually there's a lot of nurses here, and then usually we share a room with them,
uh,
or we share the flat. I mean, it can be as little as 600, 700 per person sometimes, and then you just think of what you need to spend for your daily needed expenses. Yeah.
right. So as a say as a physio as working there, is there any opportunity to become a resident, or do you always stay as in working visa?
There is a chance for you. I mean, there is an opportunity for you to become a permanent resident. You just have to apply,
Mm-hmm.
but it's actually tough. And
Mm-hmm.
we also don't know what is their requirement.
Uh-huh.
Um, to be honest, I actually applied twice, me and my family,
Uh-huh.
but we were both rejected.
So they're really strict, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, at least you're still there and have work. That's still good. All right. So the time flew by so fast, and thank you for sharing with us your experience there as a physiotherapist in Singapore and giving us a glimpse of how to go there and what a physiotherapist do in Singapore. I just have my last questions, my last bites.
Okay.
um so first one is, what's your personal recipe for success?
Okay. Personal recipe, I would say to be hardworking, study hard, I would say, especially for students or just beginning, or even for the old ones.
Mm-hmm.
It will pay a lot. If you study harder, that will give you a ticket to a better, I mean, to a success later. um that's one. Probably number two, try to be patient
Mm-hmm.
with everything. You won't be able to get everything you wanted, I mean, every time.
Mm-hmm.
There will be hurdles along the way. Um so try to be patient. It may come if it and I mean, God will give you if you, I mean, if it's for you.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I would say, and then have some time to relax and enjoy yourself. I mean, you only have one life to live. You can also work hard and also find time to enjoy.
I like that. Be hardworking, patience, and time allotted to relax. All right, my second last bite is, um, how do you continue to sharpen your knives, so to speak? So how do you continue to develop yourself as a physio?
Me, I usually, what I do is that I do have online courses that I listen to. There are a lot of platforms out there. MedBridge is one. There's also, when
Love
I
it.
became a licensed PT in the States, they also giving me some, I mean, I'm also receiving emails from the States, um, that for me to attend courses. But MedBridge is one of my usually go-to,
Mm-hmm.
where I can listen to a lot of courses that will actually, that helps me with my practice,
Mm-hmm.
because there's a lot of range that I can watch. That's one. And usually in my work, every therapist is also allotted a certain amount for us to attend courses. Yeah. So that actually sharpens the, I mean, our my professional or clinical skills.
All right. Great, great. I love Medridge as well. So when I have like free time, I attend, like I go to like different classes and see. I remember a question that I wanted to ask. Your license in as a physio in Singapore, um, how long does it before it expires? And when you renew it, do you need to have any continuing education credits to do that?
Mhm. Yeah, no, usually there is 1 or 2 years, but everyone usually opted for the 2 years license to practice.
Mm-hmm.
Then 3 months before they will ask you to renew it. I mean, 3 months before it expires.
Mm-hmm.
There's no other requirements, no continuing credits at this
Okay.
time.
Mm-hmm.
But I've heard that they'll probably do that in the next few years.
Oh,
You just have to pay the amount that you need to pay for you to get a new set of license
uh-huh.
for the next 2 years.
Uh-huh. Gotcha. All right. My third last bite is what are the three ingredients? It can be a motto, a virtue, a quote, a statement, a Bible verse, or whatever that you carry with you that you think is essential. Or in short, what are the three ingredients that make up Jonathan?
Three ingredients. I still remember when I was small and with my grandmother, because I grew up with two grandmothers at home.
Uh,
I remember the motto or the quote that they always tell me, you just try and try until you succeed.
okay.
So
Uh-huh.
I think that's also, I mean, that probably I have that in mind when I was growing up. So to achieve everything, you have to be to work hard for it.
Hmm.
Like what in Singapore, you must die, do everything you want. I mean, do everything for you to be able to achieve what you want. I mean, something like that.
Uh-huh.
So uh, that's one that I usually remember.
Uh-huh.
What what else? I cannot think of anything more. Um, but usually, I also remember that in life, you have to go through in like a straight path. You don't really have to really strive so much, actually, also at the same time. That's why I also mentioned earlier that you have to find sometimes to relax and unwind.
Hmm.
Not everything is work. You have to keep a balance between your family,
Hmm.
uh, and family. I mean, so work-life balance there has to be.
Right. What else?
I think that's it.
All right. Um, try and try until you succeed. That life isn't a straight line, and keeping a work-life balance. That's your three ingredients.
I
All
don't
right.
know if I mean, people would appreciate. I mean, they know what I'm trying to say.
All right. I do appreciate your time and sharing your experience with us and what your practice there in Singapore is. As a last question, in every gathering of Filipinos, right? We give uh takeaways, or we pack our food and give to our guests yung pabaon natin. So uh for this episode, what do you want our audience to take away from our conversation? What's that one thing that you want them to take to their practice going home?
To take a practice. Physiotherapy is actually an evolving or getting. I mean, we're evolving. We're getting. There's a lot of things that actually will be new the next round. It's like so try to update yourself.
Mm.
Try to, like what we have mentioned earlier, try to sharpen your saw. The pretty practice before may not be the same as what the beauty practice now. There are a lot of ideas. Try to keep updated, and that is also will help you to stay updated or upgraded in your practice. I would say try and don't be disheartened to learn new things. Yeah, so I would say that's it. Yeah,
All right.
that will help them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree that you know uh physical therapy, I think, is still young. We're
Mhm.
still learning a lot. Some of the things that we've learned before are not true anymore, or has been debunked already. So yeah, that's I agree with that. All right, again, Jonathan, thank you for being in the podcast. It's a pleasure to have you here. For the audience, stay tuned to our next episodes. Make sure to follow us in your favorite podcast apps and in our social media. Until next time, this is Johan for PT Meal Podcast. Thank you.
Thank you so much.